Bienvenue à Français. C'était la première moto de 23-20. Je t'aime. This is France. These are three of the sexiest super nakeds on the planet right now, and this is the start of our 2023 Naked Sports Bike of the Year shootout. So it's been a busy morning, 200 miles down to Dover, and we've got another 250 miles to clock to reach tonight's destination. Let's go. Should I say let's go get some German sausage? Made it. Big old day on the bikes yesterday, about 10 hours in the saddle, and it felt like 10 hours in the fuel stops as well. I think we had 5 or 6 in all. The Ducati is super keen for a top up. But anyway, long day, dusk till dawn. We're here, we're gonna have a fantastic time. But before we get into that, Johnny's gonna introduce the bikes.
So you're probably wondering why there aren't 7 bikes here like we had last year. The main reason for that is there are only really 2 new contenders this year to take honours away from the current king, the KTM Super Duke R Evo. This bike hasn't changed, but it is here because it was last year's winner, and this is the standard that these guys have got to try and get up to. So quick reminder of what the KTM is all about. We've got V-twin engine, 1300cc, 180 horsepower, loads of tech, and active suspension. We love this bike. It's playful, it's fun, it's powerful, it's got everything you need. So on to the first contender, we've got the BMW M1000R. This is all new for this year, although it does use components from other bikes. What we've basically got here is the S1000R chassis with an M1000RR engine. So we've got 207 horsepower on this bike. The one thing we said last year that the S1000R needed was a little bit more power, a little bit more fizz. So BMW have certainly ticked that box. As well as that, we've got wings, of course, obligatory, and we've got the Nissan brake calipers off the M1000RR as well, and active suspension. And then finally, we've got the Ducati Streetfighter V4S. This particular one is actually the Lamborghini version that Ducati have done a collaboration with. Underneath the posh rock, which I'll come on to in a minute, is a 2023 V4S with a dry clutch. That's the only difference. Everything else is exactly the same. So what the Streetfighter V4 got this year was all the upgrades that the Panigale got last year, mainly in the electronics area. So it's a lot softer, it's a lot easier to ride. Each gear has got its own throttle maps and torque maps, and the gear ratios have been changed to make the whole experience that little bit manageable and a little bit easier to ride. Now this particular Lamborghini version is some kind of homage to the Lamborghini Aventador STO, which I believe comes in these colours. And they've basically reprofiled the mudguard, this panel here and the tail unit, and apparently if you look carefully at a certain angle it looks just like the front of the car and the back of the car and the middle of the car. We've also got these posh wheels which are exactly the same as that Lamborghini car. Loads and loads of carbon, and the other thing that it gets is some really nice rear sets and levers that the V4 SP gets. In case you're wondering what the number 63 refers to, 1963 is when Lamborghini was founded. So that's it really. Underneath the posh rock is a 2023 V4S, and that's why this bike's here.
So the one thing that all three bikes here today have is the Dunlop SportSmart 3. This is a big road trip. We've come here on the motorways, bit of wet, bit of dry. Obviously we're on the Nurburgring today. This tyre has been in the range for a long time, and it will do us really well for this type of riding.
tell you what, we come here for the Nurburgring, but actually riding these roads is something else. It's fucking awesome. Okay, so we're about 750 miles into testing these bikes. We had a massive ride yesterday, 10 hours in the saddle, then a full day today riding around here in the Eifel region in Germany. Absolutely awesome roads. We've had the best time, but more to the point, it's given us a great chance to learn what these bikes are all about in a road context. So yesterday was quite boring. A lot of motorway miles just blasting through, but it was good for kind of learning certain parts about the tech and whatnot. Today has just been pure fun. Great roads and just pushing these bikes a little bit harder. So we're going to go through them now and we're going to review our thoughts on them. So Johnny, I think you should start with the BMW.
Yeah, I mean, the BMW, I think, has been, well, the first thing is on the road, on the motorway, it has to be said straight out. We've got to talk about the vibes.
Yeah.
6,000 revs, which is exactly 130 kilometres an hour, which is the motorway speed limit over here. It's actually not so bad on your hands, but the mirrors shake. It shakes the mirrors so much that you literally can't see anything behind you. The headlights, car headlights are turned into circles. It's the
crazy, isn't it?
Strange thing, you can't actually pick out any objects in the mirrors. So number one frustration is that, but wow, that engine, yeah.
I mean, that's been a common trait with that BMW inline four. Like, it doesn't matter XR, S1000, RR, whatever. They're just vibey, and especially around 6,000 RPM, which is just where you seem, I don't know why, it's where you seem to sit on them. But like, my fingers were tingling after stints on that. It was great bike because of cruise control and whatnot, but the pain in your hands.
Yeah. But I'd say one thing about the electronics on this is that, you know, when some of the motorways, I know we've been doing a lot of this, but just the last point on the motorways is that the concrete's a bit like there, isn't it, in places? That's so and you hit the mode button, you bang it in road mode, and it just backs everything off, and actually it makes it quite a good weapon to just peel off those big miles. But out here on these roads here, really playful, a lot of fun, really accurate. Stick it in race mode or race pro mode. I think we tried both of those. A lot of fun, a lot of playful. On the switchbacks, we were on some hairpins, weren't we? Me and Rich were talking about there's something funny going on with the forks, weren't we?
Yeah, when we're going into the corners, come off the throttle and suddenly it felt like the bike was slowing up on you without really, what's doing this?
Yeah.
And I thought perhaps it was throttle bodies in dynamic mode, and you think it's suspension.
I've got a slightly different take on it. I think it's that dynamic suspension, because you brake real hard into those hairpins, and then you release the brake as you're sort of already on the way in, and there's a small delay, I think, between that releasing the brake and the forks getting released, and it feels like the bike's still, because it's on its nose, I think that's where that braking sensation still comes on, and then they suddenly get released and it pops up. Yeah. It's a small thing. But
well, they said, I remember on the launch of that was something that was very notable. We're doing mountain passes and that exact thing was happening. But at the time, it was passed off on the tyres we were using on the test, but it just reaffirms it. It is, as you say, it's probably something to do with the suspension setup. I mean, on the whole, let's talk suspension. It's actually a nice handling bike. It's very agile. It feels lightweight. It's well balanced. There's not the best amount of feel through those front forks, but on the whole, it's nice and easy to place where you want it to be, and it flows nicely. And as you said, Johnny, with that electronic suspension, it's quite good at just being plush in terms of skimming across bumps and lumps and all the rest of it. It's not brutal on the body. I think for going the distance, vibes aside, it's not actually a bad bike. It's relatively sizable as well. It's not a huge bike, but the bars are nice and high, the pegs are nice and low. It's a comfy bike to just blast around it.
I've really enjoyed riding this around today, I have to say, especially around on the little fiddly corners. It's just brilliant to dart in through those. Yeah. You know, the S1000R last year, we loved the way it handles. Yeah. The only thing it wanted was a bit more firepower. Well, here we are. This is it.
Yeah. Good road bike. Question is, how does it compare to the others? So let's go straight to the Ducatis. I mean, this is the creme de la creme. We're talking £56,000 here. You could buy a couple of those and have change, and probably maybe even 3 of these, I'm guessing. But it's a pricey bike. Is it worth the money? What's so special about this compared to a conventional Streetfighter V4S, for example? What are you getting?
Basically, it's a V4S underneath with a dry clutch.
Yeah.
And I think what's it got going for it, to answer your question, really, exclusivities, it's and a Lamborghini badge.
This is the only bike on the test without cruise control, which it's not the end of the world. But I think, if you are doing big miles, so like I say, 10 hours in the saddle yesterday is one of those things that actually could have come in quite handy. And it's also the only bike here as well without the kind of interaction, for a sat nav and all that kind of stuff.
You can't do phone on it. It's got a heated grips button here.
Yeah.
But no heated grips.
Yeah. That must probably another grand extra to plug those in.
It's probably the highest spec bike here, but the lowest spec tech.
Yeah, I think principally it's almost built for performance, the aesthetics, but in terms of getting around doing big distance, this is a destination bike. That's what I've learned over the past 2 days. Yeah. This is the bike that's going to maybe not, carry you in comfort to where you want to go, but when you get there, then it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's been awesome today, hasn't it? Just blasting around on this, that V4 engine just sounds ridiculous. We've been up in mountain switchbacks, a lot of hard braking, hard throttle, booming that V4 out. It's a piece of art, and I love it to bits. And it's characterful as well. I think that's another big thing about this bike.
Absolutely, I love this bike. It's a serious bike. It's probably not the best suited to the roads we've been doing it in this company.
Yeah,
it's perfectly adequate. A lot of fun, as you say. All of what you just said, but in this company, it's probably not the most suited because it is a serious bike with a massive amount of firepower. You know this engine quite well, don't you?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with this engine and also a lot of time with the first generation. So the thing that I noticed a lot about this, it's been geared down, and that brings the entertainment factor just slightly closer than it used to be. You had to work really hard for it before. You still have to work hard for that, but it's a bit more attainable now.
Yeah, so you're liking what they've done, altering the gearing, etc.
Yeah.
They've mapped each gear in the gearbox as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've just made a throttle map and a torque setting for every single gear, which is, apart from being incredible attention to detail, that's factory level attention to detail. It is noticeable on the throttle, apart from at the slow speeds around here. We have picked up on the throttle, been a bit choppy, but certainly when you're cruising along, it doesn't even feel like the engine's switched on. It's that smooth. It's just beautiful.
I think that's the thing. That is a big point, though. Like I've tried this bike in just about every mode, in roads and sport, trying to dial out that choppiness with the throttle, because it is, I don't know, especially through villages or whatever, or traffic, as we've experienced, when you're on and off the throttle, you really, really do know about it, and it's not ideal.
I found I spent a lot of time on the clutch. Just to smooth it out.
I tell you
Lots
what,
of time on the clutch.
Setting off as well. You have to slip that. You have to give more revs than you'd expect, and slip the clutch a bit longer. It's compared to the other two bikes, it's a powerful bike, but you have to play its game. You have to learn the bike, and then do what it wants you to do. And
let's be honest, this bike is a treat to ride. This is a special motorcycle in every single aspect, apart from the heated grips and the lack of toys. It's also a really serious bike, and to get it up into its sort of fun zone, let's call it, we've called it that, it needs to be going really fast for it to come alive.
Or you spend all day in first gear.
Just stay in first gear all day long. So a mega bike, and great on the roads, absolutely memorable for all the right reasons.
Well, not all the right reasons, because one thing we haven't touched on is this bike here is the bike that makes you pull over. It feels like every 20 minutes to top up with fuel. You don't have to worry about these two bikes. They just seem to go forever with their tank range. But the Ducati, that light comes on. And maybe, in fairness to it, I mean, the furthest I got was probably about 40 kilometers into the reserve before we were topping it up. But it felt like every 5 minutes, the light would be on.
It's always this bike. We have
always
to stop
that bike.
For. It was about 90 miles, which is like...
It's not that much, is it?
So if you want to ride out here, you've got to be... you've got to like petrol stations.
I guess let's just talk comfort with the bike. Are you two happy with how it felt? I mean, it's quite a big bike, isn't it?
It's a big bike. It's super comfy though. I find there's absolutely no vibrations through it at any RPM. It's ridiculously refined.
Do you work for Ducati, Rich?
I tell you what about this bike. It's got a really long seat from the back of the tank to there. Yeah. I noticed that. And that posh seat that this one has is really soft as well. There's a lot of space on that seat. Yeah. And so you can move around and change your riding position. And
you sit in this bike. Like you sit in it.
Sit in it,
Yeah, it's nice.
No complaints. Wind protection's okay on it. I thought, considering it hasn't got any screen like the BM has up here on the front. Dash is easy to read and use and access all the menus.
Yeah.
Just
This is the gold standard of menus.
Yeah.
The 2 buttons, 2 things left and right on the screen, up, down, enter, job done.
I think the thing is Ducati's had that tech, that switch gear now, and that dash, you know, for what, 2017 did they come out with that on the Panigale? And yes, they've tweaked it, and obviously for the latest iteration of Streetfighter, they got the new Panigale dash with all the color-coded features and modes.
Gold standard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant. In terms of rider tech, fantastic. In terms of luxury tech, cruise control, etc., just lacking a bit. And if that's what you want, buyer beware.
And I think just to draw a line under this bike, it's worth just absolutely minding. When we're talking about this bike, we've got a Lamborghini special on it, but what we're really talking about is the latest 2023 V4S.
Yeah.
We've got the Lambo special here, but we're really talking about the V4S, which is half the price.
Yes.
So
that leaves this one here. So this is our champion of 2022. And the question is, has it done enough to topple these 2 more expensive, higher tech, winged rivals? And I'm going to jump straight in and say, from a pure road context, yes, it has. This bike is awesome, isn't it? Fantastic on the road.
I said to you earlier today, I think that's not just the best bike in class. I think it's the best road bike, period.
Best road bike, is that how you'd place it? I
really do. I think it's just made for the road. Yeah. It's every element of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to like about it. I mean, the engine is just fantastic. It's a peach. You don't have to rev the nuts out of it. It's got good torque from down low, but it's also very obliging. You know, if you want this bike to tick along at 20 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour, it almost is, well, it's got the easiest to deal with engine out of these 3 here.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense, does
it contradicts the fact that inside here is a 1.3 litre big V twin. It's the smoothest engine as well, less vibes. Yeah. I mean, it's almost a case of witchcraft, you know, what KTM has achieved with this bike here. Yeah. And, you know, it's also, I think, probably the most agile, you know, these big bars, it seems to turn really sharp. Great at doing U-turns and stuff like that on the road as well. We've been doing lots of shoots.
It's got all that practicality. I think it carries its weight slightly higher, and it's got slightly longer travel suspension. I think that makes it just drop in real nicely. And the suspension set up is just
great plush feel, isn't there?
You just don't have to think when you ride it, which is a big thing on the road. Yeah. Whatever you want to do, it's just like, sure, let's go.
I think the other thing is, it's so playful, isn't it? I mean,
that's the big thing.
We don't do anything naughty, but this bike here does naughty things, and we just happen to be sat on it. I mean, you've only got to kind of ask, and you will receive with this bike. It's too keen to get stuck in and be an absolute animal. But like I said earlier, the minute you want to calm things down, it plays ball, and I think that's fantastic.
It does this amazing thing where it manages to be all of those things, but kind of like it puts an arm around you and says, come on, let's do some wheelies. Come on, let's go around these It's all right.
Nothing's bad going to happen.
You messed that one up. It's okay. We'll do this. It's fun. Try again. Come on. It does it like that. Yeah. It doesn't laugh at you.
No.
You know, whereas something like this, it's kind of like if you mess a wheelie up, it's like, it's like it's shouting at you. But I think the thing with the KTM, we ride on the road for fun. Yeah. We ride on the track for more extreme type of fun and maybe even lap times. But when we're doing what we're doing today, we're just doing it for pure pleasure. Yeah. Nothing else. Pure pleasure and adventure as it is in this trick, because we're abroad and doing all that. That's that bike in a nutshell. Everything it does it with a smile, you know? Yeah.
I'm going to contradict you though. I'm going to say the only thing that has not given me a smile on this bike is the dash and the sat nav. Now, I admit I'm a bit stupid at the best of times, but I've downloaded the app. I've gone through all the motion. I've subscribed. I've actually paid for KTM's service so that we could have a nav system all the way here. It didn't work out.
Didn't work, no. And I had the GT, didn't I? Was it last year? I think my long time I had the Super GT. Same thing. I did all of that, and I just, I went back to just putting a sellotape.
Bit of paper directions. Turn left, turn right.
But no, it was driving you mad, wasn't it?
It was kind of frustrating, and I think that's one of those things. I dare say, with a few more miles, on the way home, maybe I'll crack it.
Maybe you'll try the BM on the way.
Yeah, maybe I'll try a different bike. But
this has got sat-nav on it, of course, hasn't it?
I guess the thing is, we know the tech's there. I've received phone calls on this phone. I just can't get the sat-nav to work. I think another thing just to touch on, so with the big miles clocked yesterday, again, I was using the cruise control as much as I could. So it's a great feature. My only kind of complaint with it is it uses like a toggle system. Like you go down the speed at the rear and up the speed at the front. There's 2 buttons. And when you're trying to kind of go down in speed, it feels like you have to reach around. When you've got a big pair of gloves on, it's not the easiest to access. Whereas like on the BMW, the little toggle switch, it's there. It's nice and easy to manage. So the cruise control itself is really good. In fact, all the tech on this bike is really good. I love the fact that you can switch stuff off as well. Like the BMW, you can
real easy. Boom.
Yeah, you can switch everything off on all of these bikes actually, which is great. But nice and intuitive dash, great riding position. The mirrors, I know it sounds like really wet to talk about mirrors, but the mirrors are actually really good on this bike. If you are a bigger person as well, these sit a bit broader apart. They're literally bigger than the other bikes as well, so you've got a clearer view. And you can actually see what is going on behind you in these mirrors as well. You don't just get little lights of circles. So that's all good. Cracking motorcycle, good tank range. I think it's got the best tank range of all of these as well.
Well, we don't know because we've had to stop at 90 miles. We don't actually know because it has to stop for this one every time. I just love the KTM. I still love it. It's still my favourite in this class for the road, and I think it's still my favourite of all on the road. It's just, for me, it encapsulates every reason. The reason why I ride on the road is in that bike. It still is, and I think there's rumours of a new one next year. I think, isn't there?
Well, we'll see. I mean, if there is, then they've got their work cut out because the standard's already high. Yeah. So that's our take on these bikes on the road. They've been awesome. The big question is, has the KTM got enough to overpower, overturn the more focused super nakeds on the track? We'll find out later because we're off to the Nurburgring.
So I looked up an old friend of mine who's been living and working out here at the Nurburgring for 15 odd years. And he's been showing us around the local area. He's got all the knowledge, taking us to all the epic bends and the little routes and the loops that we've been doing on the bikes today. And tomorrow, because he's a super duper qualified instructor around here at the Nurburgring, he's going to take us around, show us the lines, go through some do's and don'ts. But basically, it makes complete sense if you've got someone like Dale in your phone book to look him up. So look, we're going to do the tourist farting. Probably best just to pick Dale's brains before we dive in and just jump into the green hell.
Yeah, so tourist and farting, right? It means tourists farting. Tourist and farting means tourist driving, and that's what everybody can drive the track in. And now that's like the last thing that motorcycles can do easily and accessibly, because there are 2 motorcycle training schools, but unfortunately they're 2 days each, and they both run middle of July, end of July, and once they're gone, they're gone.
That's it.
The only access you have on a motorbike is in the public sessions. And in tourist and farting, the track is a public road, so that means you can't arrive with your tyre warmers and your race bike. You've got to arrive on your street bike with your lights, with your indicators, with your mirrors, and you will be sharing it with the most elite generation of TikTok race car drivers that you've ever witnessed. And unfortunately, those guys have no idea how a motorbike handles. They have no idea of the acceleration or the cornering of a bike. They just drive around with Robert Bosch guiding them around in their €300,000 supercars. So it means you can't take it lightly. You're going to be sharing the track with a bunch of idiots who
Yeah, well, yeah. Us
who are going to accidentally kill you, and they might even be sorry after they've killed you. But
life
it
will
won't
go on.
Yeah, but life will go on for them, so don't worry.
So that's all right.
I'll give you guys a briefing. I've got a video here.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you lots of crashes. I'm going to completely
Scare
damp
the
down
crap out of us.
damp down all the flames of ego and desire. Nurburgring breakdancing champion.
Gonna make me feel sick.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah, and then after that, we'll go out and we'll do some laps.
Let's do it.
So you've heard what we've had to say about these bikes on the road, but now we're going to talk track, because last night we were lapping around here, the Nurburgring, pushing these bikes to a whole new level. It was awesome. 100 corners of utter madness, learning new things and experience the true potential of these machines. So let's cut straight to it. Johnny, pick a bike.
Why don't we go alphabetical? We'll
Okay.
start with the Beamer. Well, I was first out on the BM. I did my first lap on that, and I think lapping this place especially, because it's not like normally lapping a track, is you need a bike that's going to be really forgiving and let you put it where you want it and all that kind of stuff, because really no real idea where you're going. I know we were following Dale, but it's still you need that sort of level of, I suppose, not comfort, but a bike that's going to forgive you for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So for me, that's probably the bit I like the least about the BM, because it just didn't quite talk to me in any great detail. I felt the rear felt a little bit skatey and the front was a little bit unstable on the gas. Best bit was the bit we wanted, was the engine.
Yeah.
It's just hilariously
Belter.
fast now, and you know, it's got the one thing we didn't like about the S1000R was its lack of firepower, and it's got that in buckets now. And you know, it's a fast place around here and just whips through the gears once you let it go, and it gets up in that top half of the rev range. You're just banging gears at it and it's going. You know that sensation when you shift up, and it goes again, and you're shifting up into fifth and it's still pulling hard, you know. Brilliant.
Rich, what about you? Best bit, worst bit?
I can really only echo what Johnny was saying, because I came straight in and I'd had the bike in dynamic mode.
Yeah.
And I chose that intentionally because I'm quite light.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know, this isn't a track, it's a road track. But as soon as I came in, my first comment was, I don't know where the front is on this bike.
Right, okay.
I felt I couldn't lean on it, I couldn't lean on the brakes.
So it wasn't talkative enough for you?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I just didn't know where I was with it. And you know, for that reason, I couldn't really jam it into a corner when I had to.
But you like the engine?
The engine is absolutely stonking. There is so much depth to that engine, and you just ask more of it and it gives you more of it.
Yeah.
And also the shifter works amazingly. When it's really singing,
Yeah.
brilliant. It kind of pulls the bike through, actually.
See, I guess for me, I mean, I rode the BMW last, and I've got to say, like at this point in time, you know, there's so much to learn here. We could do 1,000 laps of this place and still be learning it. It's just a mental place, and you know, you don't know what corner's coming next half the time. That's the situation we're all in. So I think there's a big difference in experience between, you know, the bike I rode first around here versus the bike I rode last. I started to have a little bit of an idea, trust in myself, trust in Dale, and just go for it. So actually, the BMW was the best bike for me around this circuit. And I agree with what you're saying. It was the least talkative of the three. And I think one of the major differences is that, like, I had my bike in Race Pro and I went into the electronic suspension. I actually stiffened it up quite a lot. And I believe that gave me that little bit more support, and it actually coped well with the bumps. I just couldn't feel everything I wanted to feel, as you're both saying. But I trusted it, got on with it. I loved how agile it was. So it was actually really leaf. It was quick to turn, change direction. It was relatively stable. I mean, there were parts of this track where the bike gets real flighty and you're kind of whacking the bars. It doesn't matter what bike you're on. It's like you just have to let it do its thing. And I had those moments on the BMW, but I didn't care. Like, I was so engrossed in the experience. I was so just loving that engine. It was such a lively, powerful motor, and it was just there right on the touch. The minute I was on the gas, it would go. In my opinion, the best engine of these three around here. It was just ballistic. It felt like it just wanted to keep going, as you guys have said, so fast. And as you alluded as well, with the blipper on the road, you know, as we said before, it's not got a great feel. Around here, you don't maybe go by feel as much as sound. And when you blip down on that thing, you hear it. It screams. It just brings the whole package to life in a whole different way. You've not got to double check, have I just gone down a gear? You hear it before you feel it. And again, if you trust in it, it's just great. So great brakes for me, great handling, but above all else, fantastic motor and my favourite bike.
The noises it makes is great as well, isn't it? So it pops and bangs and burbles, and it makes it really interacts with you. It's a nice, it really adds to the experience of riding that bike. It sounds angry.
What's so funny is it's a complete contradiction to the road experience. When you're on this bike on here and you're wringing the neck out of it, then it suddenly comes alive. And you know, we had this actually with the S1000R last year in our Naked Sports Bike of the Year test. It was pretty dull on the roads. You know, you kind of didn't know if the engine was running, you know, but you got it on the track as we did at Blyton last year.
Fast.
And it was an animal. Yeah. You know, now it's got another like 45 brake horsepower. It's a whole different league to what we've known before. So yeah, fair play to BMW. They've taken that package and just polished it, made it so much better. And yeah, it's a cool bike. It's great for the circuit. Rich, Ducati.
So the Ducati for me, I'm very, very familiar with the V4 and the chassis, so I felt very much at home as soon as I jumped on the V4. As a package all put together, it all works so amazingly well. Most of my experience on the Streetfighter is the first generation Streetfighter, so for me this changes, this latest generation, obviously you've got the gearing from the Panigale, and they've actually changed the final drive as well. And that brings what was once an almost unreachable, completely stratospheric like fun zone.
Yeah.
And it's brought it that bit closer, but it is still really far away. So you still have to ride it really hard to get the best out of it. But when you do, again, that motor is just a bit like the BMW in a way. It's so deep, there's so much there, so much power. But I find that chassis very, very communicative. I know what it's doing. It's telling me so much about what's going on, and you need that on a place like this.
Yeah.
Because it's bumpy and the bars are moving around and the rear is trying to step out and everything else. What an experience. Works really, really well together. And you can't really point at one bit and say that's not really in tune with the rest of the bike. Super, super enjoyable.
So you'd almost say it's the most complete package of the three
yes.
for you. Yeah. What do you think about that, Johnny?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, when you're talking about a bike that its designers have gone through each gear ratio and mapped the throttle and the torque settings and everything else within those menus per gear, you know you're riding something that people have thought every little detail about. And we were talking, you know, last night, and if you've ever been lucky enough to ride like a factory prepared race bike, a fully sorted race bike, it's kind of like that. I think the thing I enjoyed the most about it is, of course, because of the riding position and all the componentry on it, of course it stops amazingly and it gets loads of support on the front, turns in great and tracks a line nice. But the part I enjoyed the most was finishing the corner off on the way out. Because of those extra revs, you could really, really hang on to it out of the corner, where on one, like, well, both the other bikes, the BM and the KTM, you're kind of having to go for a gear when you're still finishing the corner off, kind of thing. But with the Ducati, it just goes and goes and goes and revs and revs and revs and revs, and you're thinking that light's coming on soon, and it's nowhere near it, you know, and then it pops on and you're way out of the corner and onto the straight. Just a special bike to ride.
Yeah.
It looks special,
yeah,
and it feels special.
It was quite funny before I even got out on track on that bike. It was you know, that was the bike everyone was looking at. Like, what the hell is that doing here? This
In the car park,
yeah, there
it's
wasn't
got all the attention.
Yeah, it's kind of like you knew before you went out on it, you were in for a treat. And as you say, you know, it's got all the best bits. It's got, you know, without going over everything you guys have already said, it's Ducati at their finest in the fanciest package yet, you know. And the experience was almost a little bit predictable because I knew it was going to handle well. I knew that engine was going to be fantastic. I knew that when I went for the brakes, I was going to be stopping, and I knew that it didn't matter how many gears I went down, that clutch was going to absorb however many revs I sent its way without locking the back wheel up or whatever. And it was just a very fun motorcycle. It was probably the most playful of the lot because it was so predictable. There was a lot of feel to it as well, which I quite liked.
I think the power delivery is a lot smoother, and I don't know if that's because it's long, like, you know, where the BM it goes, rah, you know, you get, and we're going to come on to the KTM, and that's almost the reverse of the BM. The Ducatis is, I really don't want to use the word boring, but it's not boring. It couldn't possibly, it could never be boring, 200 horsepower because it's so fast. But it doesn't step one way or the other. It's a completely arrow straight line from tick over to 15, and that's fantastic. But I don't like to use the word character, but it could be accused of lacking a little bit in that department, engine-wise. Yeah. But again, the caveat there is it's 208, whatever it is, horsepower. So it's not boring.
No,
But it has a serious edge to it.
Yeah,
serious bike.
Very serious when you actually get down to it.
Yeah. It's got all you need.
Which was our remark last year on the V4S, wasn't it? It's a serious bike.
Yeah. I think the other thing is as well. I think from a noise point of view, there's so much going on all the time. You know, and especially with the dry clutch on that, you'd be hanging off the bike on, you know, the right hand side and some jangling. Like, what the hell is that?
There's a lot of theatre, isn't it?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, it kind of really engrosses you.
It's obnoxious, completely obnoxious. And the amount of attention it draws, even in a car park, from everything just clattering and jangling and popping and banging.
But you know it's not broken, even if it sounds like it is.
That's right.
Right, so moving on. So the KTM, I'll start on this one because this was the first bike that I actually rode on track. And it's a bit of a shame in that respect because it was the least fun for me, which you two might be thinking, why is he saying that? But the truth of it is that it was a nice bike, it handled well, you know, the engine was nice and torquey and punchy and all the rest of it, but I just didn't feel like it had the energy of the other two for me. And I don't know, I was wanting more, and I kind of found myself a little bit frustrated in that I was having to change gears. Like it really tails off at the higher revs, and you're kind of all the time thinking, right, and you almost need to, it's got so much torque low down, you almost need to kind of gear up and pull a gear through the corner, you know, ahead of time, especially on some of the longer sections. I felt like I had to think a little bit more on the KTM. And also, it's that bit taller. So, you know, when you're on this track for the first time, and for me, like putting my knee down is like a cat has whiskers. It's just a feeler for me. And with that added height, and around here, when you're kind of feeling your way and you're not wanting to commit fully, it felt a long way to lean, to be getting your knee down. And I kind of needed that little bit of confidence from it. But I mean, it was a fun package. I'd be keen to hear what you guys think of it.
I rode it last, so I got, like you were talking about the BM, you know, I got those 3 laps in, and the pace on the last lap was significantly higher following Dale. Dale was obviously up in it as we were doing the laps. I definitely had a different gear shift pattern on that bike than I did on the other two, definitely. And I can't think of any specifics because it's just overload, like you say, 150 odd corners, but I just know my gear shift pattern was completely different on the KTM to the others. You almost have to go into the corner with the gear you want at the exit. You have to plan a little bit ahead because you're going to run out of revs too soon on the exit when you hit the gas, because the engine picks up and goes. So you need to almost have I found myself having a gear higher than the others, and that's partly ratios and engine characteristics. But yeah, I think I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it the most, probably because it was the one I rode the last. You know, for the same reason that you probably enjoyed the BM the most. I think I suppose the point to just echo really, the big weakness on the KTM is that here especially, that it just does tail off at the top, which sounds a mad thing to say about 180 horsepower. Starting
not enough.
It's not enough, you know, and that's more a reflection on this place rather than the bike, I would say. you know, so I don't have a problem with the riding position. I'm tall anyway.
Yeah.
It suits me probably better than the other two bikes. Suspension is fabulous on it. It just manages that balance between that giving you support on weight transfer, but also giving you that a suppleness where there's information coming back up. You know, through the carousel, which is like hyper bumpy, isn't it? It's like mega bumps through there. I just felt I could ride around there all day long on that, no problem. And that's like properly rattling your teeth kind of thing. But at the same time, where there were places where you hit, you know, where you're hard on the brakes, it held you up. It didn't feel like it dived too much and get loose at the rear or anything like that. So I loved it.
What's your take, Rich?
So I rode the KTM at the launch in Portimao.
Yeah.
And the thing which hit me first about the chassis on the KTM is just the amount of front end feel from it. So that's what I was most looking forward to experiencing again, and you get it in spades.
Yeah.
Absolutely spades. I think it, as Johnny said, it suffers a bit from the gear ratios because this is the most road focused gear ratio setup here. You can also feel exactly as Johnny said, you can feel it's down on power a bit.
Yeah.
Which seems like a ridiculous thing to say.
It's almost like
Saying it out loud
Yeah.
just feels like, and that is not a criticism.
No, not at all.
It's a reflection, I think, on this place more than the bike.
it's like a big cuddly beast, isn't it?
Exactly. But the thing which, for me, is just so good about the KTM is that you don't have to work at all to get it into the zone where it works really, really well. It's just immediately there. The Ducati you've got to work for a bit. The BMW you've got to work for a bit less than a Ducati, but you still got to work for it. But the KTM just says, I'm ready, let's go.
Yeah.
It's just right there with you.
It says it on the dash, ready to race.
It
When you
does.
put it- and it actually is, that's not a marketing,
Yeah.
cheesy marketing line. That actually really is. It's always there, isn't it?
Yeah. And this place is bumpy, and I found the extra suspension travel this has got because you can see how much higher it sits than the other two.
Would you go as far as to say it was your favourite bike of the three, or
Yeah.
what about you, Johnny?
Definitely, yeah.
So
Yeah.
the KTM.
Yeah.
It's interesting how I guess, we all look for different things, but I mean, all three of these bikes, truth be said, have been fantastic fun around here. Like, we've had a great time on them. As I said at the start, we learned so much more about pushing these bikes around here than we have on the road ride. You tickle a bike on the road. When you get on a track like this with the undulations, with the kind of twists and turns, with the curbs, the pace, it's kind of brings a whole different dynamic. You know, even the aerodynamics, having the wind effect, you know, hitting you in the face. There's so much to these bikes' character that come out in this environment. It's been the perfect test track. We've had an awesome time. I guess the only thing we've got left to do is choose who's riding what for the blast home. So with that in mind,
Please.
pick a key, lads. KTM. Okay. Guess I got the Lambo.
Gutted.